Hello, welcome back to Spilled Ink, the Comics Wellspring live drawing show. I'm your host, Brandon Blocksdorf, and of course, with me is my amazing co host, Max Flowers. Hello,
Hi
Max.
there.
Yeah. Today's an exciting little day because it's just Max and I. And Max is going to give me a little lesson on just, you know what? We do the fun stuff for a couple days and we kind of get a groove, but then we have to go back to learning things. So we're
Yeah.
heading back to the drawing board tonight. And Max is going to give me the lowdown on just like designing panels, panel layouts, like starting to outline like a comic on my own. And so we're gonna come up with a moment, and Max is just gonna teach me some stuff. So please, sir, educate me.
Am I just taking it away? Am I diving
Yeah,
straight in? All
yeah,
right.
dive straight in. Let's just do it.
Um, well, okay, then we're gonna talk about some basics first. And I'm stealing most of this from like Will Eisner's essays and also Scott McCloud's Understanding Comics.
Ooh,
Both of which essential texts if you want to be a comic book writer or a comic book artist. It's good to understand if you're a writer, kind of how pacing works. But and then we're also going to throw in a little bit of like movie screenwriting language kind of stuff, because I also think that that's really useful and vital to understanding like what all is in the panel, right?
hmm
But we're gonna kind of work on like a unit system, so we're gonna go from small to big, um, and actually, like on a personal note, layouts are like my least favorite part. I like it's because it requires so much brain power, right? Let me move this then if we're gonna be zooming in.
There we go.
Um, it requires a lot of brain power and thinking on this part. I just want to mindlessly draw, so like this is my least favorite part. Um, but if we're working on like small to big, right? We have a single panel, right? So a panel, and we're just doing something basic, right? So it's a square. And then from there, you have um, a page, right? And then this page is going to be filled with panels, and it can be filled with panels of various sizes, of various shapes, of whatever. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself here, but we have a page, right? And then you've got a spread, which is 2 pages. And this is filled with panels. I don't know what I'm doing here.
Nice.
Right? It's just I don't know. It's filled with stuff. There's stuff on this page. And then you have a whole book. You could there's probably a theoretical like next step, but we don't need to worry about that, right? But then you have a book, and this book is filled with spreads and pages and panels and things, right? Um, the idea is that at each of these steps, there's going to be a stopping point, right? So from panel to panel, there's a small pause. And then from one page to the next, there's a small pause. And then on a spread, you have to flip the page. So there's a very physical pause there. And then once you finish the book, that's a whole unit pause. And then you're moving on to the next book, right? Um, so there's these units. And then there's also different types of panels themselves. And I'm going to just break it down into 3 different types of panels, but get creative. I'm sure there's more. So the first panel is like a basic panel, right? So it's got a border, a solid border that you draw or create, however that may be. And then there's usually something inside that panel. And then sometimes there's text in that panel. Right. And everything stays inside
Consideration
this.
for text. That's a key thing to learn in that moment right there. Consideration for text.
Yes. Yeah, you always you always need to mark that there will be text if there is going to be text in that panel. It's vital in the layout process so that you don't struggle with it later. But you have like a regular basic panel. It's got a panel frame. It's got something in there. And nothing leaves this box that we've created, right? Like a window. It's nothing goes outside of it. Then you have essentially like an altered panel. And this could mean a lot of different things. So this could be like a funny shaped panel or something weird is going on with it, right? So like maybe it's at an angle.
Hmm.
This is like the probably the next step is you're angling your panel. Um, or like making a different kind of like shape that's not just like a basic square,
Yeah.
right? And then here's your balloon and your tail. Um, this could also mean doing like a circular panel, right? And then there's a character here and they're speaking.
Would like
Uh,
tall vertical panels go in that category as well?
I'd probably put it that more in basic, right? If it's
Mm.
operating on like a 90-degree
Big.
system,
Oh, yeah, yeah, okay. That makes
right?
sense. Yeah.
But like altered is anything that's like one step separated from that.
Hmm.
Um, so it could also mean, right, like a basic panel, but your character is like jumping out of it, right? Like like, um, this is like a Marvel panel, right? And then when Todd McFarlane did Spider-Man or whatever, like he started putting Spider-Man's fist outside of the panel and everybody was like, whoa. And Marvel was
Yeah.
like, you can't do that or whatever. So this is also an altered panel, right? Something is going outside. Sometimes even the speech balloon will be on the outside. Um,
Hmm.
or I'm trying to think of some other good examples of altered panels. This is pretty rare, but sometimes you'll see this where like the panel has some border, but then some of it's open, right?
Uh-huh.
So that I would also consider an altered panel. And then I'm going to call this one a splash or like an open panel. And that's essentially when on the page, right? So this is a page. You might have like a basic panel, and then you might have an altered panel, and then another basic panel, and then this is just left open, but you still have like a character here doing something. And
Hmm.
right, this is that splash or open panel. Essentially, what defines this is that there is no border. And all of these have different uses, right? So this is going to be a very steady progression of time. This is going to be like evocative of some emotion or some action or something like that. And then anything that has no border is going to be kind of timeless in that there's no defined like time span in which that panel operates.
Nice.
Um, and then there's shots, right? And so this is more of like filmmaking. I mean, it's not exclusive to filmmaking, but the words I'm using here are more geared towards that. Um, so you have stuff like an extreme wide shot, right? So you're gonna have like pretty much just background. It's like showing you where you are. You're at school or something.
Hmm.
Right. And there might be characters in there, but they are not taking like the predominant focus. It's the building that becomes the character. Um, then you have wide shots. So wait, hold on, this is extreme wide. And then you have wide. And this is more like the camera is focused on the character, right? but you can see their entire body, and you can see like some of the background, right, where they are. So like this is like the sign for school, and then they're like walking towards school or whatever. Um, then you've got maybe and there's it's a spectrum, right? So you can progressively get closer or farther away, but the idea is how far away the camera is. But then you might have something like a cowboy shot, and this is usually they're cut off around the knees, and this is also called a medium wide, but cowboy's more fun because the idea is that this came from when they were shooting westerns. You needed to see that they had like a gun on their hip and pulling it out, so they had to cut them off at like the knees or the lower leg.
Nice.
Um,
That's awesome. I'm totally using that way more.
and then there's medium shot, right? Cut off at the chest area. Um, and then I mean, we're just gonna do these real fast, but there's medium close, which is like shoulders and then head, and then close being like essentially just the head, and then extreme close up, which will be like a certain feature, right? It could be the nose or the mouth or whatever, but like we're just gonna do symbolically like an eye, right?
Mm.
Um, and there's one more that I'm trying to remember. I'm sure I'll go back to it. But essentially, this is like the anatomy of like how you build, right? So, um, we pick one to focus on, right? So we're gonna focus on a panel. It's gonna be a basic panel, and it's gonna be a medium shot. And then now you already have like your choices made for you, and then you can just try that. Um, So it's kind of like a pick and choose thing, right? If you choose like, oh, I'm going to choose a spread, it's going to have, 6 basic panels, 3 altered panels, and 1 splash. And this is going to be like the critical moment at the end over here right before the page turn, because the idea is you always want them to turn the page, right?
Hmm.
Um, So that's kind of like how you dissect it as the anatomy. And then each of these has an important use, right? So you just use the one that most closely fits the moment of your story. And then you are weaving these together over time to make a book that tells a story. But you're only using these basic components, really. So the exercise that we're going to do today is kind of like build on this. And the idea is you take a moment in time, or like a moment in your story. If you're doing this in school, right, it's often like day 1 of class, and it's like, okay, what did you do over your summer break? Is like the generic prompt. And I got this from somebody else. I wish I remembered their name. I don't, unfortunately, but I did not create this like exercise or practice. But so you take a moment, and what we're going to do right now is essentially create a 1-panel comic. So
Oh,
I'm
nice.
going to be
Cool.
yeah, so I'm going to be taking the opening scene of corpse paint, which is essentially the main character putting on their corpse paint or their makeup or whatever you want to call it. Um, and so I'm going to do that in 1 panel. And Brandon's going to do that too, but he's going to do something different.
Cool. I'm gonna do. I have a series coming out. With actually, well, that's in the works right now. I wouldn't say so much coming out, but it's called Anxiety Boy. So I'm gonna do a moment from that. I think of something new. Uh, because it's
Yeah.
called Anxiety Boy and the Adventures of Crippling Existence, so it's gonna be really easy to find a bad moment.
And so like here's my panel and I'm going to do mine in, right? But if you maybe don't know how you want to tell that one panel comic, you can do tiny ones. You can say, okay, well, I want the character here and then text balloon here. And then you say, okay, well, what if I do like an altered panel and then I can fit like two characters in there and then they're like talking over here, right?
Mhm.
So you can do like mini ones like this before you do your main one, so you know what you're doing.
Oh, nice. Okay, cool. Sweet. That's awesome.
Yeah. So I'm gonna do mine. And when you're doing these, usually you want to be like really loose or like really simplistic. And you can get detailed later. Um, but yeah.
Cool, 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 cool. I'm gonna do Anxiety Boy trying to pay for something, and they don't take Apple Pay.
Hmm. Now I have to think of some dialogue. I don't remember what my dialogue was here.
Yeah, it's good to write up dialogue on the side first. That always helps, like just getting that out so you know
Mhm.
what to prepare for, but also like you know what to fix without fixing it in the middle of everything.
And usually I'm working from a more developed script, or at least a
Oh yeah,
set of ideas, you know.
yeah. Like I just thought of this on the fly. Like
Let's see.
alright.
And if I'm actually like developing this, right?
Uh-huh.
Um, I'm absolutely writing out my dialogue because I hand letter, so I need to know that I
Oh
have
yeah.
enough space um to even write those words, right? Because this might be two, this being one and this being two, might not be enough space, so I might have to transfer two to a different panel showing something else. But yeah.
Nice. This is actually really fun. I'm not gonna lie. See why people draw comics. And I mean, sequential storytelling is, so much different than like what we've been doing pinups and just like character drawings and all that. It's a different mindset. It's a different approach. Like how you do characters is way different. Like there's so many things that are your mindsets to just it's not the same.
Right. Well, it's about two things. It's about storytelling, right? And it's about economy, right? How do you convey the story in a concise manner that you can redo? Because it's not just this one panel like it is with the pinups that we usually do, right?
Yeah.
We're not telling a story, and well, I mean, I guess we are telling a story in one panel, but the point of a pinup is more to like to look cool and like be an attractive image. Um, versus this is specifically meant to tell a story. It should be pretty too, but it's not its main function, if that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. I fuck. I messed that up. I don't have any eraser with me. I just realized.
And I'm working in pen, so
Yeah.
I can't erase.
All right. I'll just won't erase either. You just got to work with it.
If it doesn't work, you do a new one. That's what layouts are. you
Yeah.
know, you do a lot of these. And in graphic design and in school, it was you start with um three like you start with a box, right? And then you
Uh-huh.
progress, and then you add something to that box, or you change something about that box, right? So I'm going to take the top off that box, and then you progress, and then you say, okay, now in this topless box, I'm going to add a circle, right? And
Uh-huh.
then you say, okay, now I'm going to tilt that entire thing like this. And the idea is that, okay, this was our first try to make something cool, right? But it's really, really boring. And then this is more interesting. And then as you progress, it gets even more interesting, right? So this is like, you know, way more exciting than this ever was. And then, maybe you take a wrong turn somewhere, right? And you're like, okay, now I'm doing like this. And it's like, okay, well, this is like really ugly and like a bad step, right? But you still evolve it anyways, because somewhere in the line you're gonna have something that's perfect. Um, so that's what you should do with panels is make a lot of them. Try this,
Nice.
try that same panel over and over again, telling it different ways.
Ooh, that's cool. I like that. Yeah, because you'll figure it out better. I mean, even just writing the dialogue on the side, I did that here, and it came out to be kind of long. And then, like, I wrote it when I did the panel just now because I finished my little layout.
Uh-huh.
And it came down. I narrowed it down to like 2 lines, and neither one of those 2 lines were in any of this dialogue I wrote.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I mean, you're probably more familiar with this as a writer, the idea that like um you have to try different lines of dialogue in order for it to feel right. Your
Yep.
first try at dialogue is gonna be like super fake sounding. Um versus hopefully your third try at doing that line is gonna feel a lot more natural and fit better and
Hmm.
stuff like that.
Yeah,
So
you want to rewrite and rewrite and rewrite, and I mean that. I mean, just applying. I guess it's the same thing with this. Just applying that to sequential storytelling is, lay out all your panels like as many times as possible until you realize, okay, that's what works, or until you realize you're going overboard and you need to decide already. Like,
right. Um yeah, I mean there's creators, right, who um they probably make their book like 3 or 4 times before they do the final pages.
yeah,
They're just doing this over and over again and then analyzing it and being like, nah, this sucks or whatever.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
right. And like even conventionally, right, you do your roughs, then you do your pencils, then you do your inks. And depending on your process, right, you might do all 32 pages of roughs, all 32 pages of pencils, and then all 32 pages of inks. But by the time you get to this stage, you see problems in the penciling stage, or when you're penciling, you see problems in the rough stage. So, like, built into the process, there's like already 3 passes at making the book.
Yeah,
And then if you do like, you know, 3 different sets of roughs, now you're on to like 6 passes at making the book. So
yeah,
you start that's why input on your story is like so important, is because you're going to get blind to what like is actually good or matters in your story
I love
um
that.
by the end.
I mean, and that's the great part. Honestly, that's why, sometimes it's hard to read, like, once it's in your hand, because you're like, I've seen this so many times already. Like, I know everything in it. And a lot of times, like, the creators will just like browse through it, like, because they're just like, I've seen this. This is beautiful. I'm proud of it. But it's hard to sit down and reread and re-admire everything, unless you're doing like an editorial pass. But even then, that's you're probably done looking at your work.
Yeah. So we told our story in one panel. We did it, right?
Yeah.
Um Whether it's successful or not is up to you. It doesn't really matter. It defeats the whole point of what this is if we're going to criticize it, right? So now let's break this story up into 4 moments now, right? So we're telling the same story that's happening here, but now we're going to tell it in 4 panels instead of just one panel.
Okay. Sweet. You
So
know
like
what? I
what's
forget.
interesting about this is that you can go back to like your original dialogue, because now you have so much more room or and space presumably to put that dialogue.
I'm put on night driving while we do this.
The
So that's this one's called night
classic
driving.
lo-fi.
Yeah, I love this feature, dude, so much. You'd be good at leading workshops, Adam Matthew Smith. He's been commenting. He said, "Nice breakdown, Max. I'm a draw along at home," and he just followed up with, "You'd be good at leading workshops." Indeed, Max is phenomenal at
Thank
this.
you. I love doing this stuff. I
I think
like
he's
do
gonna
this
get it.
stuff for fun. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like my free time is spent learning and doing these exercises. So
I'll dig up another exercise I learned about this recently too. Um,
okay.
I probably, maybe we'll do it like in a couple weeks, but I forgot to. I will even pull up the creator's name I did this with, but we set up. Basically, it was a mini comic. So you have what, like 6 panels in that, or is it 8? It's 6 with front and back cover, right? Um,
Yeah, 6 pages plus the back of the
yeah,
sheet of paper.
and so or 6 panels, yeah. And you have to choose like a scent, uh, like a single standout object and something else. Like you choose those three and you place those panels somewhere, and then you kind of fill in the rest with other moments. It's a really cool exercise for making a quick short story panel.
Yeah, it's really tricky to do like short form stories, you know?
Yeah.
How do you tell an epic in just a few pages, you know?
And doing this over and over again also helps you like get better at drawing in general because you're doing it over and over again. So
Yeah. Well, you're figuring out really what makes the story function. You're figuring out how to make your emotional point hit, you know, like this doesn't actually encapsulate the entire story, this one panel. I need other information in order to create the atmosphere or to create, whatever it is that I want to say.
yeah. So how are you? What was your first moment that you started with in general? So you said it was just putting the makeup on.
Yeah. This is the end essentially. But the dialogue is this to me is a mask, but to everyone else it's war. Um, which is like super freaking edgy, but besides the point. But the idea is that she's just looking in the mirror at herself with the makeup on. Um,
Oh, nice.
and then so
So,
now we're breaking that down.
um,
But I'm not
I
really concerned about anything being like accurate, you know what I mean?
yeah. How are you breaking that down to 4 panels? Like,
Well, let me do it and then I'll explain.
okay. And I did my last panel first, and then my first panel. Booby, you need to get off my computer, my guy. Now I gotta fill in these. Dude, I can't. It's just like something else. It's always one of them. Every episode, no matter what. No escape. Um, hmm, interesting. See, and this is where, like, it's good to like map out dialogue if you have it in your head too at the same time, because you could realize like, oh, maybe I need to flip these characters in this panel to make the flow of dialogue fit best too.
Right.
Uh, yeah, I guess this works for now.
Yeah, I think I'm done too. Um, so I chose to do these long rectangular, these skinny rectangular panels, right? Um, just because I like the shape of them, and I have her putting out like a cigarette, and then her putting on eyeliner, and it's this to me is a mask, and then she's putting on like black lipstick, and we already see that there's like some other stuff on her face. And it's just but to you, and then in the final panel, it says it's war, and she's looking at herself in the mirror. Um, and the what's noticeably different than from the from the one panel, right, is that there's now a sense of time, right? This is kind of like an endless moment. We don't know what happened before or what happened after. We just know that this is happening like and now. It's an instant. Versus now suddenly we have a progression, right? It's step 1, step 2. Maybe this is actually step 4. We don't see step 3. Step 3 is hidden in the gutter. And then step 5, right? And not every panel has dialogue. This first one doesn't have dialogue. It's more of a this kind of establishes like atmosphere or like mood without without doing like a wide shot, right? Or really showing much of the character at all. And then now we get like an intro to the character in an extreme close up. With some dialogue, and we get insight into what that character is thinking. And then the third panel is a continuation, and it's also a setup where we have a contradictory word but to you and leave it on like a cliffhanger, right? So the story can't end here. There has to be a resolve, which is that fourth panel. Resolve. And then we also get a reveal of the entire character. It's still slightly obscured, but we get more of a reveal. And we get a conclusion statement, right? So this dialogue or scene or pattern or whatever gets resolved. And this is kind of, this works great for like comedy because this is what all Sunday strips kind of follow, right? You have the intro, or the setup, and then you have or I guess this is intro, then the second panel is setup, and then the third is suspense, and then 4 is the punchline.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very classic style of storytelling.
Dude, that's I could back all of that up with my 4 panels. Dude,
Go
check
ahead.
this out. So I had my one moment. My one moment was Anxiety Boy paying at a grocery store. All right. And all it says is cashier is like, we don't take pair pay, just all die double tap. And then Anxiety Boy is like, you're all monsters. Um, and so then on my 4 breakdown, I have like the cashier, just the hand scanning over something, and you just see the beep, and then you see the register saying total like $182, and off, just a word balloon that's coming off from someone off panel, and it's like Jesus, that's so much just for tofu and vegan crap. And then that's panel 1. That's like we don't see the character. We're just establishing like we're at a grocery store, setting the mood, setting the environment. Obviously, something's getting scanned. There's a price. We're talking about like someone's paying for something. And then over here, we have him trying to like use his phone to pay, and he's like, your tap isn't working. And then that's where the cashier is like, oh, we don't take pair pay, just all die double tap. And then and that's like their first interaction. So we get to see Anxiety Boy for the first time. We get to see the cashier who he's interacting with. And it's like setting up the conflict that's going on in the second panel. Um, and then over here, it's a close up actually on the cashier, just to kind of show him like in a villainously way. And I could have used Anxiety Boy; either one would have worked. But the cashier is like, or we take cash. And then Anxiety Boy is like, who uses cash anymore? And then the final, like the end of it, is like old people. And then and then Anxiety's boy is like, you're all monsters. And then you just see the scariest looking humans like ever in the line with that stuff. So yeah, it's like, setting the mood, showing our characters and a conflict, setting up like I couldn't end it here. You know what I mean? It's we also take cash. And he's like, who uses cash? You can't end it on this third panel at all. So you have to resolve
Yeah,
it with here saying old people and the anxiety boy just ending it in general. But yeah, the payoff and the fourth panel.
yeah. It's a classic form. It's and there's so much you can do with it too.
Mhm.
You know, my I have two anecdotes on this. Is that like the my favorite transformation from our first try to our second try is that now there's an illusion of time,
Yep.
right? Some sort of time has passed. Um, and like Scott McCloud actually argues that this is not a comic. This right here itself, this
Hmm.
one panel comic isn't a comic, even though it's combining words with pictures. Um, and a really important part of the definition of comics is that it's sequential,
Yep.
which implies some sort of time or something like that. Um, and this is not sequential. This is a singular image. Because like if this classified as a comic, then a lot of like marketing billboards also classify as a comic.
Oh,
There's a
true.
thing
Yeah.
with some text. Um,
A
so it's
lot of like
interesting,
paintings and just drawings and singular framed pinups, stuff like that. You get to find that almost as a comic.
right?
A
And
sketch cover with the word balloon.
right, but this idea is very, very controversial. Some people think one panel comics are absolutely comics. Some people say no, they're not. On an academic level, they don't satisfy all the requirements. To me, it doesn't really matter. It's art either way, so who cares? But you get to make up your own mind on that.
Yeah,
Um,
that's an interesting one.
and then my other anecdote is that this format gets transferred to a page when you talk about 16 panel grids, right? Um, so if you have a 16 panel grid, you have this happening 4 times on one page.
Hmm.
So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then this should kind of conclude. And then it's on the second row, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. And sometimes it continues, right? Like 4 picks up over here and goes 5, 6, 7, 8, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, or whatever it might be, right? Um, so that's how you transfer this to a page. And then also like you're adding another axis, right? So this then it goes 1, 2, 3, 4. And this is how Frank Miller does all of Dark Knight Returns,
Yeah.
right? Is
Are we
it's
jumping? Like, are we
literally
going from 4 panels to 16 right now? Is that what we're doing?
no, no, no,
I'm
no.
down. Oh, okay. I was like, I'm down. Let's do it.
What we're gonna do is jump to however many panels you want, but it has to be more than 4, and we're doing it on a page. So it's now we're doing like a page layout, right? And I'm gonna one up you on the 16 panels.
I'm gonna do a
So
9 panel.
okay,
Well, how many are you doing?
uh, 24.
What?
Yeah, 24.
Adam Matthew Smith says regarding one page panels, more like newspaper comic strip, lots of one panels in there. Um, what would you call a one panel story?
It's not sequential art,
Right?
right?
Yeah, it's not sequential. Yeah, I mean,
It's not sequential. So it's not really a panel at that point either, right? It might have a frame, but I guess I wouldn't consider it a panel. It would just be a piece of art that tells a story. Is the academic viewpoint of it, right? Um, so I don't know. I think part of it is that comics is bigger than just an academic point of view, and comics follow certain tropes and certain symbols, and when those are included, it indicates that it is more like a comic than not a comic. And so I think one panel comics are absolutely valid, just as a one page comic is absolutely valid. It's but it's an interesting mental exercise, right? To like think about those things. It's like, well, does this even classify as a comic? You know, I've been tempted in my like philosophical journey to say like, you know, the stories that I tell are not even comics, right? It's kind of like um it's interesting because like some people kind of like elevate the word graphic novel, right? They're like, oh, graphic novels are superior to comics because of X, Y, and Z. You know, comics are juvenile and lowbrow art versus graphic novels have something important to say and are longer and more meaningful. When in reality, like that's probably not true at all. Um, and so like I don't know what the purpose of labels specifically. You know, it's interesting to think about. Okay, now I
Love
have to
that.
do 24 panels while Brandon does 9.
Nah, but you're fast, dude. Like this is me. Plus, like I only have ideas for like 3 things right now. So, just for context too, in the Anxiety Boy and the Adventures of Crippling Existence, he goes to a grocery store called All Die because I work at an Aldi, and I always so instead of ALDI, I spell it ALLDIE, so it's All Die, just so
There you
people
go.
know that reference. All Die.
And I'm cheating a little bit with the 24 panels, but we'll get to that after I'm done with it.
Oh, okay, cool, interesting, interesting. Um, do like a darkened figure face, cool. Um, Man, and also like knowing, maybe a roller would have been nice for me since I was ballpoint, eyeballing these panels, and now my like one row is like super tight.
Well, and then now you're also, if you're not drawing panels within those boxes, you're no longer giving yourself a gutter,
Yeah,
which is
exactly.
a whole nother conversation about how gutters function and what they do and how they work.
I was just thinking that too, once I like
Yeah.
laid this out. But I guess it's more of a layout in general, so to consider that aspect. Like this as a sketch to turn into something is not a bad way to do it. But yeah, I should have considered gutters in general. Just for practice.
Yeah.
I've only done one fucking panel. I could just add gutters, to be honest. Let's see.
Yeah, I guess there's another reason why one panel comics aren't necessarily comics, right? There's no gutter.
Yeah.
There's no movement. I guess. What do you want to say?
I just wanted to say hi to Brandon.
Hi, Milo.
Hello here.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Actually doing
That's
pretty
good.
good.
Yeah, it's my special appearance.
Oh,
It has
yeah.
to happen every episode, I think.
Should. We need the
Okay,
words
bye.
of Milo popping in.
Yeah, I have really important and wise stuff to say.
Like?
Yeah, if it's no gutters, what is it? Your roof is gonna fall apart.
No gutters? What even are you?
Don't care, didn't ask. Plus, you don't have gutters.
Bye. Bye.
I love that. It's amazing. Words of Milo. Dude, what? That's like the keyest, the best insult ever. Don't care, didn't ask, plus you don't even have gutters. Bam! That's just a burn. Just a burn. I can't draw straight lines, so like mine are a little wobbly, but they're coming out.
Oh, mine are very wobbly. It's the whole point of layouts.
Yeah, we're not being picky. We're just
Nope. You're telling a
mapping it
story.
out. Yeah.
These aren't pretty pictures. We don't believe
I
in
mean,
pretty pictures in layout land.
I don't know. I mean, my panels got wonkier the more I went, but hey, it's there, you know.
Yeah.
This changes everything too, because it kind of like condenses and alters like what you're, you know what I mean, from that
Hmm.
space I had from here to this. So it's interesting, and honestly, already feels more cinematic too. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, I mean, well, now you're working in a page, right? It's gonna have a
Yeah.
totally different rhythm to it. You're gonna have rows, columns. There's so much more to think about and consider, right?
Oh, die. I love that. Cool. I drew one panel. Hey, Nate Price. Nate
What
Price
up?
said burritos. You're drawing burritos, Max.
Yep.
Um, we'll do a close up on our main character. So I chose Anxiety Boy because I wanted a word with an A in it because of Apollo. So that way when we make Apollo t-shirts, he could wear, you know what I mean? Yeah. He could wear like demo t-shirts and then it's all branded. Um, Dude, if you thought drawing was hard while talking, just try to like make a comic and talk and have a conversation at the same time in the spur of the
Yeah.
moment.
No, and layouts are I like I almost have to do layouts in silence, you know?
Yeah, it's like
You're
you're
so
playing a movie
crazy
in your head, you
about
know what
it.
I mean?
Yeah, you are.
You know what's cool about doing this is like the detail I'm like adding into like each part.
Yeah, it's and like trying to vary it too, right? You
Yeah,
know? It's like how do I do something new on each panel?
yeah, exactly. Adam said, I'm actually started drawing my stoner short myself in the style I did my comic strip during the pandemic. Ooh, nice. I think I saw you something about that, but I was driving and I opened your message and I never reopened it. It happens.
and this dialogue is gonna make no sense. But that's okay. It's not. That's not the final version, you know.
Yeah, no, yeah, for sure. I mean, this is all filler. This is the sloppiest. I'm gonna. I hope it looks. Who am I gonna draw? Just gonna draw a face for now. Faces. It'd be funny if I got sued by Aldi by parodying it with Aldi. That would be insane. It'd also be a hilarious story.
Yeah, what are they gonna do?
Right.
Come to your house and rip up your paper?
And just go find Tanner and just like rip up all his money supplies. Like, also, like, I've for those who don't know, you could always reference that Wally Woods 22 panels that always work.
Yeah, that's a great resource.
Yeah, super, super good. I realize I put my characters too high on the page, and so like you lower them. Think about captions, about word balloons.
Yep.
Always gotta take consideration. Just gonna put arrows being like lower it. Redraw that.
Oh, I do that all the time. Because it's not, again, it's just for your eyes to be able to read, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
To be able to understand what's going on.
Ooh, see now I'm like, expanding that dialogue too, especially on the fly.
Oh yeah, I mean, with 24 panels, I can say a lot.
Yeah. And it's cool. I like how you're using panels for like filling in words too, like captions. It's definitely that
Yeah.
Miller vibe. And people forget about that too. There's like ways to do things by like bending the rules a little bit, like that.
Right.
Should make it like metalocalypse actually. Yeah. This is stupid.
Oh, the words of every creator.
'It's funny how impatient you can start getting it towards the last panels and everything, though.
Oh yeah, well, like when I start getting over here, right? It's like, okay, I have
Yeah,
one line to wrap this up.
yeah.
What am I doing?
Dang. All right, cool. I think I've pretty much filled mine out where I could. I'm just gonna like add some detail, I guess, and map it out. I should write out what's actually happening on the script so I don't forget too. I'm gonna totally make this.
You should. I've got 3 panels left, and then we'll
Nice.
break down and analyze.
Okay, cool.
Mm-mm.
I'm hyped. I'm hyped to break down both of these. I think they'll be both be really fun to like explain and take shape from 9 panels to 24.
Yeah, and we'll cut it here. We're just doing an hour today.
Yeah, we'll just do this and we'll wrap it up.
Okay.
I have like a 14-hour drive tomorrow, so I'm trying to get as much rest as possible. So oh man, I love like how you're setting that up. I guess I'll show the bottom of mine a bit more too. There you go. Yeah, fun little homework day. Got us to be creative still though, man. Thought of a story on the fly.
Yep.
I think just practicing spacing of panels too. I think that's my biggest mistake here. Was like I cut myself real short on this bottom panel, so it was like hard to fit in what I wanted. Um, Definitely I'm gonna be someone who needs like a ruler to start before I start freewheeling panels.
Yeah. Well, I print out a 16 panel grid for Family Man in blue line.
Nice. Ooh, nice. That's great.
I still use a ruler, but I'm actually trying to get away from rulers for panel borders. I like them a little
Oh,
woggly, I think.
yeah, I love that. I think it's a great aesthetic, to be honest. Especially if you're doing your own like zine or comic or just trying to spit out work. Like it's great practice, you know. Make it
Yeah.
scratch. That's why I really like you did it all in ink too. The pen I had just is it feels really rough against this paper, so it would have been I wouldn't have been happy with it. Hey, K-pop junkie, how's it going? We're about to recap our panels we came up with today. Love it. It's cool. Did you want to explain yours first?
I got one more panel. I skipped to the last panel because I needed time to think about this panel.
You know, that's another thing
Um,
too when doing it. I did that as well. Like you have to kind of hop and make sure you land just right. But sometimes you just need a moment to find what's gonna fill in that blank in between where you're trying to get to.
right, for sure.
Because even with mine, like essentially my first and last panels are the same as my 4 panel one.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to talk about a few techniques um, that I didn't necessarily like employ super well, but that I think are like really, really cool.
Nice.
Are we doing mine first?
Yeah, let's do yours first.
Okay. So I'm breaking mine down into a 6x4 grid for a very specific, but very like silly reason, and it's that like black metal typically uses a 6/4 time signature.
Nice. I love that.
So
That's
trying to
such a
play with
great.
that rhythm of it not
Yeah.
being regular, it's still being familiar but not quite regular, and then having like this sinisterness to it, right?
Hmm.
Um, so that's why it's broken down like this. But we kept the panel with the cigarette, except this time I got to add a sound effect. And then it kind of goes back and forth a little bit between like a picture, and then this would just be like a black panel that says I can't stand this, and then we get the close up of the eye makeup, and then it's the way I look, the way I feel, in a black panel, and then we get like a hint of like some lipstick or something, right? And then up here it says it sucks. So now we're combining words and pictures, and then we have like a pretty like this would be like a very detailed, more graphic panel of like an extreme close up on her teeth and lips, but it being like grimy, not pretty, right?
Ooh.
And then we go, and then we're on row 2, and we start on words this time, and it says, "To them, I'm a freak." And then we have an off kiltered panel, like it's like the horizon line's tilted, and we get a farther viewpoint now, but she's just in silhouette, and it's I don't belong. And then black panel, I'm supposed to be pretty with maybe some like sparkles or something. Um, and then now we're showing like the more fantastical, I guess, parts of corpse paint, the decorations, the weird stuff that's not like traditional makeup. And but is that what I want? And then it's her putting in like a tongue piercing, and then in big letters it says hell no. um and then these 4 panels are following the line of like her making the mark that goes from like the top of her head down to like her neck,
Nice.
and it's I hate them all, they don't understand, and it's just a picture of like the sinkhole where she's doing her makeup.
Nice.
And then far like a wide shot in silhouette like this one, except we're on like a flat plane, and it's her leaning over the sink, and it says life is pain, and then we get to see more of her face, and it's split in half, like half of it kind of being in shadow, looking more like a skull shape versus the life, and then a black panel that just says it's death. um to me it's a mask, and then we get the that mirror perspective that I had in like the one panel.
Hmm.
It's a little different, but essentially it's the same shot. To me, it's a mask. To you, and then it's an overhead view of her looking in the mirror, standing pretty far back, but it's like an overhead aerial shot. And then we have her walking out in silhouette, and it says it's war.
I love that. It's the whole. You're just seeing the transformation throughout it. You know, that's so great.
Right. It's like, the chaotic internal monologue.
Yeah.
This is far from like what I would want it to be. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Um, but it's an interesting exercise. I haven't actually done this full 6-4 grid before and
Oh
tried to
wow.
figure out how it works. So
See, that's fun. That's a challenge.
yeah. Um, so like a couple things that I'm gonna try in the future is combining, right? So breaking a little bit of the rules of the 6-4 grid, but like turning these three into one panel or something like that, right? Um, so you can create a little bit of like dynamics and time flow there.
Uh huh.
Um, I didn't do an open panel. I think that like this could have been a really cool open panel.
What do you mean by
Or
open panel?
when we talked about like the anatomy of like a splash, right?
Oh,
So
yeah.
so this one wouldn't have a border. It would just be the words "it sucks" with like maybe the lipstick even coming out of one of these
Mm,
other panels down here.
yeah. That'd be cool.
Um, the hell no could have been an open panel because it's loud, so it would break the panel border, right?
Hmm.
Um, and then I kind of played with it a little bit in this section where these are different shots. We're like tracking the lipstick as it moves down, but goes across down her face. But the idea of this is more of like sequential movement of like a hand and trying to like force time to slow down, right? So if we had 4 panels here, it could be like a wave, right? And then it goes over here, and then maybe it like turns into a fist or something, right? But the actions between these panels take a few milliseconds, right? But we're forcing it to slow down because we're breaking it into so many panels.
Yeah. I
Does
love
that
that.
make sense?
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, because the time that's taking place between these is very abstract, and I'm requiring the reader to like make
Just
up a lot of what's happening between these.
you're speeding up the
So
pace by doing that like crazy, just by like eyeing it, you know, and especially because it's a movement of makeup. You feel the drag through it, you know?
right, yeah, that's what you're trying to create in the sequence like that. And so playing around with stuff like that, especially because I have so many panels, I think would be really cool.
Mm,
Trying to slow down time and trying to speed up pace or doing whatever to manipulate the reader's experience of the events.
that's sick. Love that.
Your
That's
turn.
great explanations too. Um, cool. So let's sweet. Let's switch over. Mm. All right, so I have my anxiety boy at a grocery store. We're picking up from All Die, our spoof of Aldi, and so I kept the same panel from the four panel layout. You know, we start off with the you now can see it's like an All Die employee scanning like something. It says like tofu and total 182, and then you see the beep. So you know you're setting up our environment here. And you do a cool shot of Anxiety Boy. You get a full, you know, scope of what he looks like um, and what he's all about. And he's just like, this is insane for cereal, milk, and tofu. Like, you're really killing us. And then it jumps over to him trying to pay. And here you see like details, you know, like we're doing a close up on the machine to pay, and it shows the total, like some all die promos going on, and his phone going to tap. And he's like, your tap isn't working, and then we do a close up to this all die employee over here, and they're like, "We only accept all die double tap." And then he's like, "What the fuck is that?" And it jumps over to the next panel where we pull out, and you see side profiles of both Anxiety Boy and the all die employee, and then the all die dude's like, you know, it's double tap is all die's best way to pay. Do you want to learn more? And he's like, no. And then it does a super close up to the all die employee profile, and then it's just like you'll get an all exclusive perks and blah blah blah, and you know really just a bunch of text that's ridiculous that's going to fill up the whole, you know, side of the panel here, like it's trailing off. And and then it's gonna highlight exclusive prize, and then he's like, prize, like what? And then it's gonna jump over here to the, so at Aldi you have to put a quarter in to get your cart.
Mhm.
And so instead of a quarter, it's gonna be the Aldi Super Shopper cart coin, and it's gonna be like Metalocalypse. It's gonna be like filled with like razors on the side, and it's gonna have like a
Oh
razor
my
back part. It's gonna be all brutal and everything. And he's like, and then from there, it's gonna have like blood trailing off and at the bottom. Um, and then it's gonna jump back to them, and the employees can be like, "We also take cash." And then Anxiety Boy is like, "Who still uses cash?" And then it's gonna be like, jump to the last panel, which I'm pulling from the last panel in the 4-page story, where we kind of have like over the shoulder shots, but it's more just seeing their faces at the very corner, and then like a long view of like the belt, and then you have like an old person on the floor that's like, I'm dying. Oh, the Aldi employees like old people, because old people just use cash now. And then old person be on the floor like, I'm dying, and then like another person complaining over here, and they're like spewing out blood because they have the all die super shopper card coin.
Dope. Very cool. Yeah. Yeah. How do you feel about this? Do you think the story changed? Do you think that you have a better understanding of the story?
I
Have a
think, what's fun about it is that like I got to like expand the world a little bit more, every single time I did it.
yeah,
And that was kind of fun, adding more tidbits, because here it's just a funny, like, one panel, which we've defined that really isn't, it's not sequential art, it's not really a comic, where it goes from, we don't use pair pay, just all die pay, and he ends with like, you're all monsters, and then we get to expand upon that even more by being like, showing conflict, like, hey, your thing's not working, and then explaining like, oh, we only use this, like, and then you get to add the old people joke into it. And then here you add like, not only all the elements that were within this, but we got to expand upon like the all die like culture, and like get to really understand that more, and then open up to this like bizarre razor, like, cart coin that gets you stuff,
yeah.
so I thought that was kind of fun. You kind of get an understanding of like, oh, I can build more and more and more out of just this one singular. He was just checking out. That was all it was. I just
Moment.
want Anxiety Boy checking out at the grocery store.
Right. Yeah. And like it's interesting too, because like you learn where you need to pull back too.
Yeah.
You're like, this doesn't work, right? Like maybe 24 panels is too much, to process,
Hmm.
or like you can't fit important things into it. Or it doesn't really matter what it is, right? But the point being that you kind of learn where to stretch it and where to kind of compress it. Um,
Yeah.
it was a fun exercise. I've never done this before. I
Dude,
saw
me
this.
either. This was my first time doing this. This was insane. This is so. We'll
Yeah,
definitely do it again, and with other people. We'll just pull up one sentence prompts. Like, dude,
yeah,
literally, this was Anxiety Boy checks out at the grocery store.
yeah,
That's it. That was all I gave.
yeah. It's pretty fun. I would encourage anybody. I think writers should do this. I think the artists should do this. I think you should just do this for fun, even if you don't write or draw. You know,
Hmm. You
it's
realize like
pretty
what kind of
interesting.
stories you have within you, and just, I mean, dude,
Yeah,
this was in the moment. None of
yeah.
this. All I knew was Anxiety Boy, and I wanted to call it All Die. Like, that's it. That's, you could trail off and create stuff, and you'll shock yourself. I'm honestly surprised how cool this came out.
I hope you keep doing it. Yeah,
Yeah,
paneling is the world's worst nightmare, and it's also the best time you'll ever have. It's interesting.
honestly, like, we'll get more into the nitty gritty of like, Rick Lopez is, he does Cosmic Cat. Um, he has like page layout, so he be just like you. He'll print like an 8-panel grid on everything, and that way his pages are ready to go, and it's already all measured and set up. So we'll talk about setting up panels like that, and maybe doing 1-page stories and everything.
Yeah, and
That'd be fun.
we didn't even tackle any of like the altered panels or the splash open
Nope.
panels. We
Right.
both decided to stick to basic panels and grids, which
Yeah.
like most people don't do, and it's a whole nother art to create an appeasing layout that's not conventional or
Hmm.
on a strict grid.
I've been
So
reading a lot of Promethea, which is, dude, that entire series is 2-page spreads.
yeah,
It's insane. It's insane. That's something to study for sure. JH
Yeah,
Williams. But we get
there's
through.
some yeah, or like blankets by
Oh yeah,
Craig Thompson.
blankets. Yep. Hmm.
There's some really innovative stuff that he does with layouts in that book. So
Yep. Yeah, we could
yeah.
talk about creators and books all night. You and I. We could just
Oh,
we
for
should stop
sure.
there. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. We will
no
stop.
problem.
But this was a blast, dude. I'm glad we got to do this. It was a great, in betweener night while we in between guests. We have a stacked month. I'm really excited for that. We have Artie Murphy coming on next week, and then the following week I'll be at Baltimore. We'll try to do a live one there too, maybe with Jade Louder and some other creators if I can. And then we have Tanner Klessens, the artist from the Shadow Anthology cover, going to come on the following week. So we're stacked, and then we're going to jump into October, which, dude,
Oh
I
man.
always do Drawtober of some sort. I always find one prompt I want to go with. So we're probably going to figure out one and see how we keep up with it. That'll be a fun month. But
Yeah, a month of hour long live streams
yeah,
every
honestly,
day.
yeah, every single day, straight up.
Oh
Up
man.
for it. But yeah, I mean, and do you want to do some quick shout outs before you sign off?
Yeah, sure. Let me grab my
I don't,
books.
I don't have anything near me really. I could do one with.
You can get Bubbles now at lesserknowncomics.com. It's a queer horror story filled with neon colors and black mold, based on true events about me and Milo staying in a motel room. And you can also get the process scene on lesserknowncomics.com as well. We print these ourselves, bind these ourselves, and this is all the behind the scenes information on how we made the book. So yeah.
Love it. And don't forget, check out CWS. We're going to be at Baltimore Comic Con. We have tons of promos, and we actually just redid some really cool bulk pricing, and some great things went down in price. I'm happy that took effect today too. And then we have great discounts on banners, tablecloths right now. And we're bringing back Inspired Ink in about a week or two. We're going to be doing interviews for the first time since June, starting next week. And then we have a new series called Spotlights, where we're bringing literally every single creator we can, where we'll get like a nice little 15 minutes of fame, in a sense, where they'll get to talk about what they've been up to, where you could find their work, talk about their work, and do some quick shout outs. So we're really excited to be doing that with a whole bunch of creators. That's going to be very open to everyone. Lots of crazy stuff. So, and of course, as always, check out Apollo City Comics. Hit us up on Instagram and on lesserknowncomics.com. We're launching a new book in October, so keep an eye on that, and possibly a new book in November as well. So, and actually 2 books in October. We have a Kickstarter for a horror anthology, and possibly a book called Soul Catchers will be coming out. So we're very, very busy at Apollo City Comics. But thank you guys all for joining. Max, I adore you. You're the best. Thanks for today's lesson. I had a blast,
Yeah.
and thanks for hanging.
Later, everybody.